After 3 days away on my college internship, I came home with my backpack slung over my shoulder, craving the comfort of my room that had always felt like a sanctuary. But the second I walked down the hall, I stopped cold. The door was wide open, boxes stacked high, my posters ripped from the walls, and my books thrown into crates labeled "Donate." And there, sprawled across my bed with her shoes on, was Emmy, my stepmom's daughter, scrolling through her phone like she had always belonged there. My stepmom Lena was humming softly while folding my sweaters into neat piles as if packing away my childhood. I froze. 3 days. Just 3 days gone, and my world had been stolen. I turned to my dad, standing in the hallway, waiting for him to speak, to protect me, to remind everyone that this was still my room. But he didn't. He just stood there, arms crossed, eyes lowered, silent. And that silence cut deeper than any words ever could. In that moment, I realized I wasn't just losing a bedroom. I was losing my place in this family. My name is Sarah, I'm 17, and this is the story of how one room revealed everything about where I truly stood in my own home. You know that feeling when something familiar suddenly feels foreign, like walking into a house that smells different even though it's supposed to be yours? That's exactly how it felt. My posters, the ones I'd collected since middle school, band posters and travel photos, were rolled up and shoved into a basket. My lamp with the chipped base from when I knocked it over during finals week? Gone. Even my desk, where I'd written every essay, every journal entry about Mom, had been cleared off as if I'd never touched it. Lena looked up at me with that smile she always wore, the one that never reached her eyes. "Oh, sweetheart, you're home. We just thought it was time for Emmy to have more space. You're older now. You'll manage fine in the guest room." Her tone was syrupy, almost cheerful, like she was doing me a favor. Emmy didn't even glance at me. She just rolled over, hugged my pillow, and laughed at something on her phone, leaving the faint sound of her chewing gum snapping in the air. I felt my face burn. "Dad," I said, my voice shaking, "this is my room." He shifted his weight, rubbed the back of his neck, and muttered, "We talked about changes." Not to me. He said it to the floor. Like even the carpet deserved more of his attention than I did. My chest tightened so much it hurt to breathe. Talked about it with who? Because I wasn't part of that conversation. My words hung in the air, but no one answered. Emmy giggled again, tossing her hair like the queen of some kingdom I hadn't realized I'd been exiled from. Lena clapped her hands once briskly. Now, let's not make this dramatic. It's just a room. The guest room will be cozier, more private. We'll redecorate it for you. Something mature." My stomach turned at that word. Mature. As if losing your space, your memories, the last corner of the house that still smelled faintly of your mother's perfume in the curtains, was part of growing up. I wanted to scream, but all I could do was stand there, frozen in disbelief. Have you ever felt invisible in your own home? Like you could shout and cry and it wouldn't matter, because the people you needed most had already decided not to hear you? That was me, right there, in the doorway of a room that used to be mine. I stepped inside anyway, grabbed the photo of Mom from the dresser and held it tight. The frame left a faint dust outline on the wood, like even the room itself was mourning the loss. Mom had been gone for 5 years, but in that space, with those curtains and that old quilt she'd sewn, I could still feel her. And now Lena was erasing it, box by box, smile by smile. I whispered, "Dad, please," hoping maybe those words would shake him. But he only shifted again, cleared his throat, and said the words that would burn into me forever. "It's just a room, Sarah. Just a room." My chest cracked open. Just a room meant my memories didn't matter. Just a room meant my feelings were an inconvenience. Just a room meant silence was easier for him than standing up for me. I carried my plant, the little one I'd grown since 7th grade, the one I used to set on my windowsill to catch the evening sun, down the hall to the guest room. The air in there was heavy, musty, like cedar left too long in the rain. The walls sloped low, the window faced the neighbor's fence, and the mattress sagged in the middle. It felt like a storage space, not a bedroom, not mine. As I placed the plant on the nightstand, the thought hit me. This wasn't about furniture or square footage. It was about being pushed aside, about Dad choosing silence over me. That night at dinner, Lena served roast chicken with the good plates. She raised her glass, smiling wide. To new beginnings. Emmy clinked her water glass against hers, grinning like she'd won a prize. Dad raised his too. I sat there, fork in hand, stabbing green beans I couldn't swallow. Emmy talked about how much she loved the new room, how the lighting was perfect for TikToks. Everyone laughed, everyone except me. And when Dad glanced at me across the table, his eyes slid away the second I met them. Silent again. That's when I realized betrayal doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers through silence. And that silence was only the beginning. The first night in the guest room, I couldn't sleep. The mattress dipped in the middle so my back ached, and the walls creaked every time the wind pressed against the siding. It didn't feel like a bedroom. It felt like I'd been shoved into a storage closet with a blanket thrown over it. I stared at the ceiling, watching the shadows from the tree outside crawl across the plaster. And all I could think was, how do you go away for 3 days and come back to find your life rearranged without your permission? In the morning, Emmy burst into the kitchen wearing my sweatshirt, the one with the faded college logo from my dream school, and she smirked when she saw my face. "Oh, this?" It was just lying around. "Fits me better anyway," she said, sipping orange juice from my mug. My dad sipped his coffee in silence, eyes glued to the newspaper. He didn't say a word. Lena beamed at Emmy, patting her on the shoulder. "See, I told you, this house feels more like home now, doesn't it?" My throat tightened as I poured myself cereal into a chipped bowl. It wasn't just the room anymore. Piece by piece, they were erasing me. The next few days felt like living as a guest in a house that once carried my name. Emmy hosted friends in what used to be my room, music thumping through the walls as they laughed and took selfies against my old tapestry. Sometimes I'd walk past and see the glow of string lights I had hung years ago, now framing her mirror as she posed. Every laugh that echoed through the hallway stabbed like a reminder, you don't belong here anymore. I tried talking to Dad one evening when Lena and Emmy went out shopping. I sat across from him at the kitchen table, my plant beside me, because I couldn't bear to leave it alone in that suffocating guest room. "Dad, why are you letting this happen?" I asked, my voice cracking. He looked up from his phone, sighed, and rubbed his forehead. "Sarah, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Things change. You're almost grown. You'll be at college soon, and Emmy, well, she needs stability. Stability." The word echoed in my head like an insult. I was his daughter. Wasn't I supposed to be the one who needed stability? I swallowed the lump in my throat and whispered, "What about me?" He didn't answer. He just stood, rinsed his cup, and went upstairs. The silence screamed louder than any fight could. The weekend came, and with it, a dinner Lena insisted on making special. She invited her sisters and Emmy's friends, filling the dining room with chatter. I sat squeezed between two of Lena's relatives who talked over me as if I wasn't there. Emmy bragged about her new room makeover and how she was decorating the desk, my desk, for makeup tutorials. Laughter filled the air as Lena raised her glass again. "To family," she said, her smile sharp and deliberate, eyes flicking toward me like she was daring me to challenge her. I raised my water glass out of habit, but felt the heat crawl up my neck. Dad clinked his glass with hers. He looked right at me but didn't open his mouth. Silent again. That night I returned to the guest room and sat on the edge of the bed, holding the photo of Mom. I traced the frame with my fingers, remembering her voice, the way she used to say, "Home is where you feel safe." I whispered into the quiet, "I don't feel safe anymore, Mom." Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. If Lena wanted to erase me, I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of watching me break. Over the next week, Emmy pushed further. She wore my jackets, used my makeup, even grabbed the necklace Mom had given me from the dresser before I had the chance to move it. When I told her it was mine, she rolled her eyes. "Relax, Sarah. You're so dramatic." Lena scolded me for starting fights and told me to be grateful Emmy was including me. Dad stood in the corner, jaw tight, but said nothing. Always nothing. I began to wonder if silence had become his language, his way of choosing them over me without ever having to admit it. One night, as I walked past my old room, I heard Emmy laughing with her friends. This place was such a dump before. Now it's actually cute. Can you believe she still had posters like a little kid? Pathetic. Their laughter roared through the doorway. I leaned against the wall, my fists clenched, and something inside me hardened. This wasn't just about a room anymore. This was about erasure, about being told I was replaceable in my own father's house. I thought back to the way Lena had said, "It's just a room." No, it was never just a room. It was my history, my safety, my place, and if they thought they could erase me quietly, they were wrong, because I wasn't going to stay silent like Dad. I was going to find my voice, even if it shattered everything. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening, the kind of night where the air was heavy with summer rain and the walls of the house seemed to hold their breath. I came back from class exhausted, my backpack digging into my shoulders, and all I wanted was a moment of peace. Instead, I walked into the kitchen to see Emmy at the table wearing my mother's necklace, the delicate silver chain with the tiny heart charm Mom had given me on my 13th birthday. My chest tightened so sharply it felt like a knife. "Take that off," I said, my voice trembling but low. Emmy looked up, smirking, twisting the charm between her fingers. "What, this? Dad said it was fine. It's not like you're the only one who can wear jewelry." My stomach dropped. Dad was at the sink, rinsing dishes, not even glancing back at us. "Dad?" I said, louder this time, pleading. He hesitated, shoulders stiff, then said the words that shattered something inside me. "It's just a necklace, Sarah. Just a necklace. Just a room. Just me being erased, one piece at a time." Heat rushed up my spine. "No, it's not just a necklace. It's mine. Mom gave it to me. You don't get to decide, it belongs to her now." Emmy rolled her eyes, stood up, and said in that mocking sing-song tone she used whenever she wanted to make me feel small, "God, you're so dramatic." No wonder Mom left. Who would want to deal with this? The slap of those words nearly knocked the air out of me. For a second, the room spun. Lena walked in then, carrying shopping bags, and froze at the sight of us. "What's going on?" she demanded, her eyes flashing with irritation like I was already the guilty one. "Your daughter is wearing my necklace," I said, clutching the table so tightly my knuckles turned white. Lena tilted her head, lips curling into that smile she wore when she thought she'd already won. "Oh, Sarah, it's just a piece of jewelry. You need to learn to share. Emmy is like your sister." "She's not my sister," I snapped, my voice sharper than I'd ever let it be in this house. The room went silent. Emmy's smirk faltered for the first time. Dad dropped the plate. He was rinsing, the crash echoing against the tile, but he still didn't say a word. My heart pounded so hard it hurt, but I pressed on. "You took my room. You took my things. And now you're trying to take what little I have left of Mom. And you stand there." I turned to my father, my voice breaking. "And you do nothing. Nothing." The rain outside hammered against the windows, filling the silence he left hanging between us. Lena placed her bags down, straightened her shoulders, and said, "Sarah, this behavior is unacceptable. If you're going to keep creating problems in this house, maybe you should consider living elsewhere." My breath caught. Was she threatening to kick me out? Emmy's grin returned, wider now, as if she'd been waiting for this. Something in me snapped then. I stepped forward, pulled the necklace from Emmy's neck so fast she gasped and held it tightly in my fist. "Over my dead body," I whispered, shaking with anger. Dad finally turned, his face pale, his mouth opening like he might speak. But nothing came out. Always nothing. Lena's voice rose sharp and cold. "That's enough. You will not disrespect me in my house." My house. The words seared into me. "Your house?" I laughed bitterly, tears streaking down my cheeks. "This was Mom's house before you ever walked through the door. This is Dad's house, my house. And you don't get to erase me from it." My voice cracked, but I stood tall. Emmy muttered under her breath. "Crazy," but her hands were trembling now. For the first time, they both looked unsettled. I placed the necklace around my neck, the charm cold against my skin, and I swore I would never let them take it again. The tension in that kitchen was so thick I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. Finally, Dad spoke, his voice so quiet it almost drowned under the rain. Enough. But it wasn't firm. It wasn't protective. It was the kind of word you throw into a void when you want everything to disappear without fixing it. I stared at him, waiting for him to say more, to choose me. He didn't. I pushed past them, stormed into the guest room, and slammed the door. My hands were shaking as I clutched Mom's photo, whispering through gritted teeth, "They won't win. I won't let them." And for the first time, instead of feeling broken, I felt something else rise inside me, resolve. If Dad wouldn't fight for me, I would fight for myself. And the next step would be making sure Lena and Emmy finally saw that I wasn't someone they could erase. The days after that confrontation felt like living in a pressure cooker, the walls of the house closing in, every glance from Lena sharp enough to cut, every smirk from Emmy daring me to crumble. But instead of breaking, I began to watch, to listen, to memorize. If Dad refused to see what was happening, then I'd make sure the truth was impossible to ignore. I started small. At night, when the house finally quieted and Lena's perfume no longer lingered in the hallway, I'd tiptoe back to my old room. Emmy usually left it a mess, clothes on the floor, makeup smudged across my old desk. But sometimes she left her laptop open. That's how I saw it, an email chain between Lena and a realtor. My heart pounded as I scrolled quickly, snapping photos with my phone. They were talking about selling the house, about converting assets once Sarah is out. My stomach turned, bile rising in my throat. They weren't just taking my room, they were planning to erase me entirely, to cut me out of the very foundation of my life. I tucked the information away like a weapon, screenshot after screenshot, careful not to close anything that would reveal I'd been there. During the day, I played my role. I sat at dinner, nodded when Lena spoke, pretended Emmy's digs didn't sting. But inside, I was building a wall of evidence. Receipts tucked into drawers, whispered phone calls caught on record when Lena thought no one was listening, even photos of Emmy parading around in things that weren't hers. I wasn't just collecting proof of their cruelty, I was collecting proof of their intent. And then, almost without planning it, I found an ally. Mrs. Henderson, our neighbor, had known me since I was a kid. She saw me one morning on my way to class, my eyes swollen from another sleepless night, and she touched my arm gently. "You okay, sweetheart?" The kindness nearly undid me. I hesitated, then whispered, "Things at home, they're not what they look like." She didn't press, but she nodded, eyes soft with understanding. Over the next week, I started talking to her more. Little pieces at first. How Emmy had taken my room, how Dad never spoke up, how Lena's smile never reached her eyes. And Mrs. Henderson, bless her, listened. She told me, write everything down. Don't trust your memory when your heart's hurting. Keep a record. Someday you'll need it. So I did. Late at night in the suffocating guest room, I scribbled into a notebook every detail. Dates, times, words Lena had said, the way Dad flinched but never spoke. The sound of Emmy's laughter through the wall. It wasn't just a diary. It was a record, a case. The shift was subtle, but real. Emmy noticed it first. One evening she sneered, "Why are you so quiet lately?" Finally giving up, I met her eyes and smiled, a smile that made her falter for a second. "No," I said simply. "I'm just paying attention." She rolled her eyes, but I saw the flicker of uncertainty. That night, as I sat by the window with my plant, the only piece of my old life that still felt like mine, I made a promise to myself. I wouldn't scream, I wouldn't beg, I wouldn't fight their way. I'd fight smart. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. Lena hosted another family dinner, this time inviting Dad's relatives. She dressed the table in her finest linens, roasted chicken filling the air, candles flickering. Emmy pranced around in my jacket again, bragging about her new space like it was some prize she'd earned. I sat quietly, letting the words wash over me, until Uncle Tom, Dad's brother, turned to me and asked, "So Sarah, how's school? Still aiming for that scholarship?" I nodded, smiling faintly, but before I could answer, Lena cut in. "Oh, Sarah won't be here long. She'll be moving out soon. We're making some adjustments to the house." The words stung, but I forced myself to stay calm. Funny, I said, my voice even, because I just read an email about those adjustments. Something about selling? The room went quiet. Forks clinked against plates. Lena's smile faltered. I don't know what you're talking about, she said quickly, too quickly. I leaned forward. I think you do. And maybe Dad's family should hear about it too. Dad shifted uncomfortably in his chair, but I didn't let myself look at him. My eyes stayed on Lena, steady and unblinking. For the first time, she didn't look so certain. Emmy muttered, You're lying, but her voice lacked its usual bite. I let the moment hang heavy, then sat back, sipping my water. Maybe I'll explain later, I said, calm as ever. The curiosity in the room was palpable, whispers starting up among Dad's relatives. Lena's smile returned, brittle, as she rushed to change the subject. But I'd planted the seed, and in that moment, I felt a surge of power I hadn't felt in weeks. For the first time since I'd come home, I wasn't the one shrinking in silence. They were. The seed I planted at that dinner grew faster than I expected. By the next week, whispers had spread through Dad's relatives, questions simmering just beneath the surface. Lena tried to plaster over it with more dinners, more forced smiles, more speeches about family unity. But the cracks were showing. And I was ready. I had everything I needed. Screenshots of Lena's emails with the realtor, recordings of her talking about converting assets, photos of Emmy flaunting things that weren't hers. My notebook bulged with details, every slight, every moment of silence from Dad written in ink that couldn't be erased. I waited for the right moment. It came on a Sunday afternoon when Lena insisted on hosting a family meeting. She gathered everyone, Dad, Emmy, and a couple of Dad's siblings, in the living room. The air was thick with tension, the smell of her overly sweet candles making my stomach turn. She stood in front of us like a queen addressing her court. We need to talk about moving forward as a family, she began, her voice dripping with false warmth. Changes are necessary, and Sarah needs to understand her place as she prepares for her future. My hands trembled, but not with fear, this time with anticipation. I stood before she could continue, pulling out my phone. Funny you should say that, I said, my voice steady, because I think everyone here deserves to hear what those changes really mean. I connected my phone to the TV with a single tap, and the screen lit up with Lena's emails. Gasps filled the room. Lines of text spelled out her plan with brutal clarity. Once Sarah is out, we can finalize the sale. Emmy will finally get what she deserves. Assets should be under my control. Lena's face drained of color. This is out of context, she sputtered, rushing toward the screen. But I was ready. I swiped to the next piece, an audio recording. Lena's own voice filled the room. It'll be easier once Sarah's gone. She clings to this house like it's hers. Mark won't stop me. He never does. My dad's name on her lips, her confidence in his silence, cut through the air like a blade. All eyes turned to him. His face was pale, his hands gripping the armrests so tightly his knuckles whitened. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Again. Emmy leapt up, shouting, She's lying! She's manipulating you. But I swiped again, this time to the photos. Emmy wearing my necklace, my sweatshirt, standing in my room with her friends while captions mocked me. Finally mine, scrawled under one. The room buzzed with whispers, the weight of evidence undeniable. You tried to erase me, I said, my voice shaking but loud, and you almost succeeded. But this house isn't yours to sell, and I won't let you take what Mom left behind. Not my room, not my memories, not me. For the first time, Lena faltered. Her smile cracked, her eyes darting desperately toward Dad. Mark, she said, her voice sharp, say something. All eyes landed on him. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. My heart pounded in my chest, bracing for more of the same, for him to shrug it off, to stay in the safety of silence. But then slowly he stood. His voice was low, almost a whisper at first. I should have spoken sooner. The words rippled through me like shock. He looked at me then, really looked, and for the first time in months, I saw guilt in his eyes. Sarah's right. This is her home too. Lena, this has gone too far. Lena's face twisted with rage, her veneer cracking. Too far? I've held this family together while you sat in silence. You let me do everything. And now you take her side? Dad's voice grew firmer. It's not about sides. It's about what's right. and I've been a coward for too long. My throat tightened, tears stinging my eyes, but I held them back. This was the moment I had been waiting for, not just to expose Lena, but to break Dad's silence. The room erupted in arguments, Lena shouting about sacrifices, Emmy crying about being embarrassed, Dad's siblings demanding answers. But through it all, I stood taller than I ever had. For once, I wasn't the invisible one. I was the one holding the truth, and the truth was louder than their noise. In the end, Lena stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls rattled. Emmy trailed behind her, muttering curses under her breath. The house was finally quiet. Dad sank into his chair, his face lined with regret. He whispered, "I'm sorry, but I didn't answer right away." I walked back to my old room, the door still open, my posters gone, my desk scarred, but it was still mine. I ran my fingers over the windowsill where my plant used to sit, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of peace. Later that night, as I sat by the window with Mom's necklace resting against my skin, I realized something. Betrayal doesn't always come with shouting or fists slammed on tables. Sometimes it comes with silence, but silence can be broken. And once it breaks, everything changes. That was the night I learned I didn't need anyone to hand me my place in this family. I claimed it myself, and though the road ahead would still be messy, one thing was certain: I wasn't going to be erased. Not now, not ever.